Welcome to the Career Change Diaries podcast with me, Alice Stapleton, and I'm delighted to be speaking to Melissa Power today. Hi Melissa, how are you doing?
Hello, hi there. I'm great, thank you.
Good.
Really good.
I'm so looking forward to talking to you. So Melissa is a world-leading indoor cycling expert, an educator and a studio owner who actually made a bold career pivot from TV production. So looking forward to hearing more about that, where she once actually wrote the catchphrases for Catchphrase, which I remember vividly from my younger years, to revolutionising indoor cycling. So after retraining as a fitness professional and spending a decade teaching across London, she founded Cadence, the city's leading boutique cycling studio, and the MPowered Academy, which is a globally recognised certification through which she has trained over 600 instructors, guiding many to make their own career change into fitness. So it sounds like you've been rather busy
It
over
sounds
the
great
last,
when you say it like
few years.
that.
I know when I was,
Wow.
yeah, that is you, and it sounds like a very, very inspiring story. So I'm looking forward to hearing all about it. So first of all, I'd love to hear a bit about what you were doing in TV and how you found that first career as an experience.
Good question. I actually started working in radio. So I went to university in Manchester and read linguistics, which was really, really interesting. Don't use it so much now, but it was a great degree. And I stayed up in Manchester after university, and I love talking. And I didn't quite know what to do. It was that period where you leave university and you're just trying to make money to afford your rent, and it's the first time you've had to kind of make your own money. And I remember doing a string of, quite frankly, horrendous jobs. I did everything from like selling electricity door to door. I think I sold everything going. I think I sold Coors beer in a call center. I worked in a bank. I worked in an estate agent. I tried everything. And
wow,
and then I was like,
impressive
what do I actually?
resume.
I mean, no, I didn't stick any of them out for very long.
And was that you trying to find your way or just paying bills?
I think it was more kind of paying bills and sort of thinking, what do I want to actually do? And I remember alongside that, I actually started doing a community radio show. God, I'd completely forgotten about that. On, I think it was called All FM. I doubt it even exists nowadays, but did a community radio show and thought, I really like radio. And actually, there's part of me that thinks, I don't know if I hadn't changed career and gone down the fitness route, would I have gone back to radio, because I really enjoyed it. But I ended up working then as a broadcast assistant, is what they call it, for BBC Radio Manchester. And then I worked for Radio 3. I grew up listening to Radio 3, so it was a real treat to work there. And I probably was in radio for a year or two. And then I left Manchester. I think a relationship ended, and I sort of I'd had enough of the city. I'd been there for, I think, almost 8 years by that time, maybe 7 years. I moved back to London, and the next step seemed to be to TV. And I got into TV on I think it was, my goodness, I'd have to check exactly, but it was like it wasn't a graduate recruitment scheme, but it was like out of university, we're looking for, like bright minds, and we'll place you in different programs. So I got in through that, and my first job was in the props department at the One Show, and it was such a fun job. I think with this placement, they put you into different shows, and then after that, you just sort of found your own way. Because the way it works in TV, for unless you're staff, which very few people are, is that you're freelance. So you are literally living from
Yeah.
one job to the next. And so I was working the props part. I just remember that was so fun. It was
So what
absolutely
did you
brilliant.
have to do as
So you had
a
to make stuff,
props person?
or
Oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah, or go and anything, any kind of you might have to get stuff for it might be something really simple like cooking, or you might just be providing plates and stuff like that. For I was very different when I was there. Or they might be doing a whole in studio like showcase. So you'd just be making stuff or going to shops and getting outfits, or I just remember that
Right.
being
So
a
lots
huge
of
amount of
different
fun.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, uh,
um
and was that, did they like the idea that you had the broadcast
yeah, I
experience, or
think
was
so.
it
And
not really that
I
necessary?
I think it was more about the application, was more about thinking creatively and coming up with ideas and kind of understanding the BBC. So I think what really helped me was having the background, especially up north, because at the time a lot of the BBC was moving to Salford. So I remember
Mm-hmm.
in the application me talking about basing programs outside of London. I think may have held me in good stead. But it was about coming up with ideas and, pitching ideas. And I later worked for quiz and game show development. So that was kind of one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
Um,
And you said it was a graduate program. So how long ago had you graduated to still be
Probably
eligible for that?
I'm not sure if that's totally right. I'll have to check, but it was definitely
Oh,
it was an entry level kind of scheme
okay.
into, so it might have been, I will double check that, but it was kind of entry level aimed at young people.
Right, I
So I'm not sure
see.
if it was
Well, that
graduate. I'm not
sounds
sure if
really
you had.
cool.
Yeah, it was really good. It was really good, like a researcher scheme or something like that. God, it's so long ago. I'd completely forgotten about it. Um,
So you do the one show
then I went and
stint, and
worked on the
then
culture show. Um,
yeah.
and then from the culture show, I think it might have just been those two on the scheme. And then I ended up working as a runner in the in-house quiz and game show development department. So that's where you all sit around, think up quiz and game shows, and then every so often you pitch them to commissioners. And I started as a runner, but I think it must have been about 2 weeks, not long in. One of the I think he must have been a producer at the time. I'm still good friends with him now. He's one of the probably the loveliest man in TV. Um, Gave me a chance. He said, "Look, I think you'd make a good researcher," and I had a huge amount of fun doing that. I think I was there for about a year. Um,
What did that involve?
I mean, literally sitting in meeting rooms, coming up with quiz shows, with game shows. We got
Oh,
one
okay,
off the
that's as the
ground.
researcher.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So on a team, you'd have producer, assistant producer, researcher, and there were four of us. It was me and three blokes, and you just it was all. I mean, it was tough to be creative from 9 until 6 every single day, 5 days a week, coming up with new ideas constantly is hard.
Mm.
Um, and then what you do once you'd found the bones of an idea and you'd maybe got an okay, let's see this in its next format from a commissioner or from an executive producer, you then start to develop it as a format. And then you do run throughs. So you'd pretend to be the cast or you pretend to be the host. I mean, I'm really kind of distilling it down.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then you'd eventually pitch it. We got, at the time that I was there, we got one show off the ground, which was called Beat the Pack. I mean, it it didn't stay on TV, I don't think, for more than a couple of series.
That must have
Um,
been quite cool, though, after all that hard work, to then see it
yeah.
on TV
Well,
and see it
I
come to
then went on to
fruition.
work on it. I went on to it as my first proper production job as a researcher. Um, and I was in TV. You have different types of in quiz and game shows. You have different types of researchers. So you'll have a questions researcher or a questions assistant producer or producer who come up with the questions. That's their main job, and they'll go all over different programs. So you'll have people that work on Tipping Point. They might have worked on like loads of different things. They might have worked on University Challenge. So, and then you have a team for the cast. So what we're doing on the cast team is interviewing people. You know, you're looking for the cast,
Right, I
looking for
see.
personalities,
Yeah.
auditioning people. So I went to work on that, and then I made the move into entertainment. So that when that came to an end, it was like, wow, where do I go now? Because that's when you're really kind of, you've done the scheme, you've done the kind of
Mm.
introduction into it. And I dipped my toe into production and I dipped my toe into development. And I think I like development, but I didn't want to go back into it. It's a really fun job, but if you're not hugely passionate about it, it can get quite stressful, thinking, oh my god, I've got to come up with 5 new ideas by next Monday, and I've already come up with 67 different ideas, you know.
Okay, it's a kind of bit of creative pressure almost.
Absolutely, yeah,
Mm.
completely. And you know, it was I do have such fond memories of it. And you know, sitting in a meet, it's very much not this, but, and you hear creatives say that. So not this. What about a game show with superheroes, and we're looking to train the next best superhero as a stunt? So not that, but, and then what you want someone to
Oh
go is,
God.
actually that is good. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of, I remember like picking words out of hats. Like, you know, you might pick one noun, then you might pick like a verb, and then you might pick a name, and then you might see, can we make you know, a game show from that? Like the way
Oh
that you have to be
wow.
creative
Gosh.
is tough.
Yeah.
And still now I find myself thinking of shows. In fact,
Oh
last year,
really?
yeah, two
Hard
years
to
ago
switch off.
or last year, Chris, my partner, and I came up with a show which we are still pitching to people.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah,
Still in the
I
bones
was
then.
I was ill for a week and I couldn't teach, and I came up with this show, and we developed it, and we're sort of in the process of pitching it to people. But then we opened Cadence and had a baby, so it all got
All got a bit busy since then. So
yeah.
so what where did you get to in that career then
So
before
I
the
then got
shift?
I then worked on Surprise Surprise,
Oh,
and I was
amazing.
there for one series, which was really stressful. I I found that there's a kind of work ethic in the TV industry where, and when I was there, I remember it being like, who's going to be the first to leave the office, and I found that all really uncomfortable. And like my work ethic now is that, you know, will work literally all day, all night. But when you're working for yourself, it feels different. And I don't
Mm,
think I was passionate enough, and I don't think I cared enough to be like, well, I want to sit in this office until 10 o'clock at night. And I just wanted to do it and then go home. And I did enjoy it, but I was kind of, it was hugely stressful. And a lot of people in TV are
yeah,
incredibly
I
stressed the
have
whole
heard
time.
that. Yeah. And is that because there's such a deadline of when that program
Yeah,
has to be, or what creates the stress?
I think it's around the deadline, B, around it having to be absolutely brilliant. Everything has to be perfect.
Right.
Everything, you know, the production on stuff. Like with Surprise Surprise, it was really hard, obviously, because it's all surprises. So trying to, you
Yeah,
know,
hard to
I remember we had to
control.
like get someone to get his mum down who didn't know, and we were reuniting her with 7 members of her family, and then he was standing in the queue and he was going, I think she's twigging, and all this kind of stuff. It was, but before that, I think when you're low down as well in TV, when you're a researcher, um then it's just a lot of work for not much money. And I don't know if that's
Right, I
changed since
see.
I've left, but unless you're really thinking, I don't mind because my dream is to be an
Mm,
EP or a commissioner, then I found the work I wasn't a fan of it. And like, I remember once like crying in a stairway because I'd been spoken to by someone who was really, really rude to me. And I think there's a lot of, and I hope it's changed now, but when I was there was definitely a lot of quite harsh words, and, you know, execs not sort of sugaring the way that they spoke to you. And that was definitely prevalent there. And I used to come home and just feel so stressed about going in the next day. And that carried through to my next job, which was on This Morning. I was on This Morning for about a year. And that was hugely stressful because you're producing, it's called, they have 5 day teams. So it's, I was an assistant producer on that. So you have a producer, an assistant producer, and a researcher, and you're all producing 1 day a week. So say it was Wednesday, you start making the show on Thursday. And I remember one week, the day before the show, the whoever was in charge just threw the whole thing out the window. I was like, I don't like any of this. Or I was there when Robin Williams died, and we were all packing up to go home at midnight, and then the news came in, and then you have to sit back down. So you'd get the night before your show, you'd get home at 1, and then you'd get picked up again about 4:30. So it was a hugely stressful environment, and some of it was really, really fun. Some of it was fun. Like, I remember doing something for Claire Balding. I made a little film for her, and she was so grateful, and it meant so much to her. And there was one time where I where I had to compile and order in every single advent calendar that was on offer that year. I remember sitting in my desk with advent calendars like up to here. I think I've still got some of those, drinks by the dram. I think I've still got some of those kicking around in a cupboard. So some of it was really, really fun. And then from there, I went to work on Catchphrase, because the guy that I told you about in the beginning, Nick Johns, the nicest man in TV, Nick Carmichael Johns, I think contacted me, and he said, look, I've got a job that's right up your alley, coming up with the catchphrases for Catchphrase. And I had to go for an interview and give them 20 catchphrases, because you have to come up not with just the catchphrase, but you then have to come up with the illustration, the idea for it. So if it was like, I don't know, Mad as a March hare, you'd have to think, right, do we start on the hare? No, that's too much giveaway. Do you show the ear of the hare first, then you pull the camera out? So there's so much to think about.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
I love that program. I often refer to it in my sessions, funnily enough, because what I do with people, it's a bit like, when you're thinking about what you want to do for a career, it's almost like you're taking away those pieces of the catchphrase, and what's revealed as the big picture. So it's funny that when you start talking about catchphrase. So tell me what happened then. What prompted the shift?
So concurrently to all this, I was teaching indoor cycling. So when I was back in Manchester, this is kind of like the other arm to the story, I got knocked off my bike really, really badly, and broke my arm, broke my leg, slashed my nose, broke loads of my teeth. It was a really bad road traffic accident. Yeah. And to recover, to kind of recuperate, I started going to the gym. Now, before this, I had never been to the gym. I bunked off PE at school. Every week we used to go down to Camden and hide in Costa. I wasn't interested in exercise at all.
Okay, so you weren't like
I was not Sporty Spice.
Or anything.
No.
Oh, yeah.
So started going to the gym, started going to indoor cycling classes, and just really loved it. Really loved it. And obviously loved it so much that I thought, well, I want to teach this, which is, I suppose, a fairly bold move to make.
Oh, of course, why not? So was that quite a kind of instant attraction, or
I think it probably took about not over long, probably about a year. I got really into fitness. I lost a lot of weight. and
And
got
that was part
really
of
into strength
the
training.
that
Yeah.
was part of the rehab.
Yeah, it was part of the rehab, but I think the weight loss and the kind of transforming my body was as I'd started going to the gym, it kind of all kind of fell into place at the same time. And I think there was, when I was at university, I think a lot of people put on weight and I put on weight, and I was, after university, I wasn't that happy with my body. And I remember really clearly thinking, right, I'm just going to do it now. I'm just going to do it. And I did it.
Mm,
um, and I think that's quite an interesting, I think sometimes there wasn't a particular catalyst, but I think it was September, which I always think is quite a good month to start something, a bit like January. Like with New Year's
yeah.
resolutions, I think some people really need that catalyst. So I think, so I did it and then loved indoor cycling, got certified, and then started teaching um sort of the occasional class around Manchester. Then when I moved to London, um I then started teaching before and after work. So I would be getting up and cycling into Soho for 6:30 and teaching. I was teaching at the third space. I mean, I literally taught every dark basement in London I have taught in at some point. And then I'd be
And
going to work, and then I'd be maybe going back and teaching another class. And I just remember thinking, God, I'm loving these bits. And then I would hate going to work. And then there'd be an element of, well, I need to leave work to go and teach at 6:30, but no one's left the office. Everybody's going, who's going to be the first to leave? Blah, blah, blah. And I just thought, I want to be here. I want to be there.
yeah.
And, teaching is, God, it's so much harder, that you don't get to sit in an office all day. You have to teach at very odd times, especially when you're trying to make it as a fitness professional or a fitness instructor. You have to really, really graft. But I think I'd never really liked working for anybody else. I think if it kind of boiled down into it, I didn't really want someone to tell me you've got to be in at this time, you can't leave until 7:30. I remember feeling really trapped, like sitting in meetings feeling like physically and mentally trapped, like I want to be out there, like I want to be in charge. And also for the amount of money that you were getting paid. So I then took the decision, after I finished it on Catchphrase, I didn't take any more TV jobs. Um, and I just thought, I'm going to go full time and I'm going to give it 6 months. And if by the end of the 6 months I'm not making enough money, it's not looking. And at the same time, I did my PT qualification as well. So I kind of added that string to my bow. And I remember emailing and going to every single studio that I liked in London, um, and looking at the classes, finding out who the master trainers were, finding out who the boss was, asking about auditions. And what's really funny now as a studio owner is that I can completely see through it, because we get people emailing going, love your studio, love what Cadence is doing, such a good vibe. And I'm like, fam, you've never been. I know everyone who's been. Do you know what I mean? So I
Where
was very, very tenacious and sort of did all the 6:30s, worked Saturday mornings, worked Sunday mornings, worked every single evening, because you're working either the 7 a.m., 6:30 class, then there's a lunchtime class, then there'll be evening classes. So it's kind of
mm.
knackering. You're going, you're coming back, you're going, you're coming back, you're going, coming back. But I made it work.
And are you employed by the studio, or are you
No,
self-employed and
completely
you almost
self-employed.
yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of instructors that you'll see. And I was, teaching up to, God, 30 classes a week, because you get paid by the class. So the more
Yeah.
classes you can teach, and obviously you've got that dead time in the middle of the day where you're not earning anything. So it's very, very, it's very, I mean, at least with TV, you kind of, you could have a sick day or whatever. But with being a self-employed fitness instructor, you're completely by yourself. There's no sick
Mm.
pay, there's no holiday pay. um there's nothing. And I was very, very clear when I opened Cadence that I wanted instructors to be paid well, because a lot of places start instructors on such low rates. And I'd always kind of thought, when I open somewhere, I want to pay instructors well, because when you pay instructors well, they want to stay and they want to work, and you know they want to that they feel really valued.
Yeah.
And I remember working for absolute pittance when I started, and then Jim's sort of taking the mickey with it a bit, really. um
And tell me about the certification that you had to do to become an instructor to
so
start
I did
with.
mine online. Goodness, and I kind of didn't even really think about it at the time. I just did it online and sent it all off, and then it was only when I'd been teaching for about, how long had I been teaching for by that point? 10 years? God, I can't, I mean, the years just go by. Um, I then set up my own certification, because
Mm-hmm.
the majority of indoor cycling certifications, I'll be honest, are terrible. They're either tagged onto a PT course as a kind of half a day to become an indoor cycling instructor. And what's happening is people aren't getting the education that they need. And they're kind of ticking a box, and then they're going out, they're not really knowing how to teach. So they're picking up bad habits from other people who don't really know how to teach, or have just seen something
Right.
on TikTok and
Yeah.
Instagram and copied it. But the certification is, it's your grounding, as you'll know. It's like, if you want to do anything, you've got to have a really good grounding and education for you to feel confident and be able to deliver fantastic classes.
Yeah. Yeah.
um and even the one I did, wasn't great, and I taught myself everything that I know through, I mean, I'm hugely geeky. And I've worked out, the science behind everything, and what works and what doesn't work. And when I say the science behind it, I don't mean, scientific cycling. I mean, like, the science behind what makes a really good fun indoor cycling class. What are the
Yeah.
tips and the tricks?
Yeah.
What are the things that you don't see? A bit like that catchphrase, all that kind of hidden stuff about where do we start on the hairs of the ears of the hare. The same with indoor cycling. There has to be so much going on behind the scenes to work out what cadences work, to work out how to treat people, to work out a whole manner of things that most places don't do. And that's what I
Mm.
wanted to kind of help instructors with.
Yeah. So the academy that you have, that's MPowered. That's the name
Yeah,
of the
that's the
academy.
MPowered Training Academy. Yeah,
Okay. So how long does that certification take
a
to
day.
to get a
So
day?
one
Okay.
day
And
course. Yeah,
is that done online, or do they
it's
have
done
to
in
do?
person. So there's two options. You
Okay.
can do it online, and people can do that in their own time. They get a month to do it. Most people don't take a month to do it at all. Or you can do it in person. And it's a day's learning with a bit of reading before the course. And then the assessment is sent via video, so they can record that in their own time, just by themselves on a bike, wherever. So it sort of takes the pressure off for people to come back straight away the next day and do it.
Mm.
Because we found in COVID, we weren't allowed to do the assessment in person, because you weren't allowed to share a mic. It had to be like 2 hours
Oh yeah,
between
of
mic use.
course.
So we were forced to do it via video. And actually, it's worked a lot better, because, lots of people travel to we get people from all over the world coming to do the course. So
That's
people fly
cool.
in. I know, it's incredible. It's incredible. And it worked out a lot better, especially if people, if they've got kids, to get back to the kids at night and then not have to stay over in a hotel or get another train down. And I also found that giving people time to practice their assessments and choose their music and all that kind of stuff sort of made them better teachers, rather than being forced to do it, a week later or a day later.
Mm. Mm.
Um, it actually made, and interestingly, some people at that point say, I thought I could do it, but actually it's too much, and it's not something that I think I can do. Now I've seen how much work goes into it. Occasionally we get people that just say, you know what? I thought being a spin instructor was easy, and it's not, and I am not prepared for that amount of work. And which is really
Yeah,
good. It's really
God, who
honest,
would? I'd never think that was easy. God, I don't know how people do it, to be honest. So, what tend to be the backgrounds of the people that then become these instructors?
Really good question. I would say 95% are non-fitness. It's
Really?
very, yeah, 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 yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Most people come from marketing, PR. They come from working in banks. They come from working what they call kind of like the typical 9 to 5. And everybody
Yeah,
is looking
corporate
for an
jobs.
escape.
Yeah.
And exactly like I did, they're going to spin classes and they're loving them and they're thinking, this is what I love. I want to turn it into what most people do is they start with it as a side hustle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So a lot of my staff at Cadence still have a day job and then they teach alongside their day job. I mean, they're all saying, I'd love to be able to do this full time. But it's a like I've said before, to be a spin instructor full time, you have to be able to pick up so much work. So it's hard. A lot of people who do teach full time put it alongside personal training or teaching other things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm.
I sort of only ever taught spin. So yeah, most of them are doing a 9 to 5 and then come and do the course. And actually some of them, I'd say quite a few have gone on to make it their full-time career. I've had 2 people that have gone on to open their own studios. So yeah, it's one of
That
those
must be
things
very
where,
rewarding.
yeah, and seeing people, because it's such a different career to the ones that they're often doing, which is, people saying they're miserable working in finance or kind of very, very structured jobs where you have to behave in a certain way. And I think there's an element to indoor cycling where it's, totally freeing and, yes, it's incredibly hard work, but, the feeling after teaching a brilliant class is incredible. And I think that people want to chase that high. There are also some lows.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. We've all had classes that have gone wrong, and
Not landed very well.
things have gone wrong.
Yeah. But yeah, I suppose with the music and the lights and the people, yeah, it must be a really great atmosphere.
Yeah,
And if you had to describe the qualities in somebody that makes a good spin instructor, what would you say those are?
I'd say empathy.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So the main thing that I'm fighting against at the moment is getting people to fall back in love with spin that have previously been spin intimidated. A lot of classes nowadays are very focused on the instructor, which it shouldn't be. So when an instructor's
That's so
teaching a
true,
class
actually. Yeah, they've
and
become
it turns into
almost
performative
celebrities, some of
exercise.
them.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of places, and I really don't want to name anywhere, but there's a lot of places where there's, 50, 60, 70, even 80 bikes, and you're
Oh,
walking into a
wow.
room as someone that has never done spin before. No one shows you how to set up, no one clips you in, and then the instructor just sits at the front and performs. And I mean, I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty, but there's things like people are moving their legs way too fast and they're doing really unsafe moves on the bike. And do you know what? Yeah, there might be 2 or 3 people in the front row that can do it who are 22. But the majority of the population cannot and do not want to ride in ways like that are damaging to your joints, that make you feel inferior, that make you feel that you can't keep up. And what makes a good instructor is warmth, understanding, and empathy. Welcoming someone into a room, putting them instantly at ease, saying, listen, me and you, let's go and set your bike up together. Doesn't matter what you can do in the class. If you just sit and soak it all up today, that's fine. And that's what we do at Cadence. We welcome every single person individually. We set them up, we make them feel completely at home. And then when you're teaching a class, I think what's been forgotten when it's with indoor cycling is that essentially you're still a group exercise instructor. You're not a
Mm-hmm.
performer. And I don't know what and how that has got lost along the way,
Mm,
but
mm,
all other group exercise, the instructor doesn't stand up at the front and show off. You know, you don't have a boxing class where the instructor sort of goes, right, guys, I'm off to spar. If you just watch me for a bit. You know, every other exercise class, the instructor's checking your form. They're making you feel that you can do it. They're adapting the exercises. And that should be the same in indoor cycling. There's no reason why that shouldn't be like every other group exercise class. So what I make sure of is that my class programming can easily be adapted either way. And if I see one person in the class that cannot keep up with the movement that I'm doing or whatever, I'll just start to take it back a little bit. And nobody will notice, but that person will think, oh God, thank God they've stopped doing that. Do you see what I mean? So I think
Mm.
patience, empathy, warmth, understanding, and a really, really good work ethic and love for music. Because your class plan is your playlist, and playlisting. I mean, I probably do 10 new playlists a week, and each playlist takes at least 2 hours.
Oh,
So it's a lot of
really?
work. Yeah,
A lot of thought goes
yeah,
in.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
the instructor chooses the music and
Oh
the
God, because
class plan and
absolutely, you do your
everything.
programming. You have
Yeah.
there's so much that goes into it. I cannot tell you
Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
scientifically
Fascinating.
programming a class and thinking what zone do I want people to be in. You're not saying any of that out loud, but in your head you're thinking, where's the power coming in? How am I going to structure this class? Then you're thinking, right now, let me do this all with music, and it can take you hours to find the right song.
Mm.
Um, it
Well,
there's
you're obviously very passionate about it. It's really lovely. It's really, yeah, it's lovely to hear and to see all that passion and enthusiasm
Yeah, thank
coming
you.
through. So okay, so just to backtrack, so you're doing your own teaching.
Yeah.
Talk me through what made you then decide to set up the academy, how you then set up the studio, if it wasn't that order.
Yeah,
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 talk me
yeah. It
through all of
was that
that.
order. So the academy's been running for about 7 years. Um, and I got to the point about a year and a half ago where I was teaching mainly for I was teaching for Google, for DeepMind, for like nice places. But I was there. I didn't feel I was leaving every class not feeling that rewarded because it was always different people. There wasn't a lot of classes in the city in central London. You're not really establishing relationships with people. Class passes sort of ruined that for a lot of places as well. Class passes where you
Oh,
can have
right,
a membership to
yeah.
lots of different places, and fitness becomes quite disposable. So you can go to one studio and go, oh, I didn't like that because there's a thing with like a funny kind of meme with ClassPass where it's ClassPass reviews, and like I think there's an Instagram page for it, where someone might be like, hairdryer wasn't working in changing room, 1 star. But that instructor, it will have said, like spin with Michelle, and all it will come up as is 1 star for that instructor who's bless them spent
Oh.
2 hours. Yeah, exactly. So because of that, fitness, I think, especially after COVID, became quite disposable because people were only going into work a couple of days a week and then they were working from home. So people didn't really have any allegiance. I mean, that's not strictly true. There are people who do, but the bigger gyms, certainly, you would often see different faces. The way of behaving in classes became, I think this is more after COVID than before, became absolutely awful. People coming in late, people going on their phones, people having phone calls in class, people leaving early. There was no respect at all. And the horror stories that I've heard, well, one guy was telling me that guy came into his class, put his headphones in and sat down and watched a film. And I went, no, 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 carry on teaching. So I was getting to the point,
How
and I didn't like
bizarre.
this in myself, where I was getting frustrated and I was worried that would have come across in my teaching, and I wanted to put a stop to that straight away, and I wanted to become passionate about indoor cycling that I'd fallen in love with all those years ago.
Hmm.
And the way to do that was to open my own studio and set precedents where nobody has ever in a year had a phone in class. Everybody comes in, puts their phone in their cubby hole. There is an element of community. Every single person knows each other. And I wanted to open a studio near me, near where I grew up, and I wanted it to be everybody kind of, you get all the stuff that I wasn't talking about with the big studios. You're getting that welcome. We only have 14 bikes, so everybody knows everyone. We've got people there who are 70. I've got people who are 17. We've got so many different members and so many different clients. And yeah, we still have ClassPass, but they are so lovely because they use it as their local gym, their local studio.
Mm.
And what I wanted to do was also kind of change the face of indoor cycling and take it away from these TikTok trends and these Instagram trends of unsafe riding and double time, and it being all about the instructor. And what was happening is people were saying, God, I hate spin. And when we opened the studio, my partner works in film and TV still, but on and off, but he would go onto set and people would go, oh, you've opened a spin studio, I hate spin.
Mm.
And we kind of thought, we know what you're talking about. So I wanted to open somewhere that would challenge people's perceptions of indoor cycling and make them see the benefits and, and how much there is to love about it. And we've done that over the last year. We were named number 1 spin studio by Time Out. We were named by Women's Health
Amazing.
as one of London's best indoor cycling studios, GQ as well. So it's
And
been brilliant.
it's obviously been it's a huge success, and I'm not surprised with the knowledge and the expertise behind it. Do you mind me asking how does one start a cycling studio? Like, it sounds so easy. Oh, I just open a studio. Can you talk me through the steps and
Yeah,
even the
absolutely.
financials of it, if you
So
are
we
comfortable
are
doing
the
that?
only place that I know that did it without investment. I used my
Okay.
savings. We used our savings. So we went small on purpose because we couldn't afford a big space.
Yeah.
So I drove past this place all the time. Drove, cycle, lol, all the time, and I was like, I'm sure that there's a big basement. There's a PT studio, and I was like, I'm sure there's a basement down there that I don't think is in use. So I approached the studio. I said, look, can we have a look at your basement? And the short story is that they were like, yeah, we had loads of meetings with them and we said what we wanted to do. So we run the spin studio in the basement, and we have 2 different businesses. They have the PT studio and we have the spin studio. And so how did we go about it? Well, basically the day we signed the lease, we found out I was pregnant. So that
Oh.
added a slightly another complication.
Yeah.
But Chris built the entire studio himself. So
Oh, right. Save
I
some
mean, and
money there then.
he's not a built. He watches a lot of YouTube, but he built the podium. We painted the whole thing. The lighting was probably the most complicated. I knew what I wanted it to look like, so I designed an interface, and then we found an LED supplier. And we got the LED
Okay.
because otherwise it would have been £80,000 for someone to come and do your
Yeah.
lighting. And we got someone to we found an LED supplier, and then we put it all up ourselves, um, and bought all the bikes.
So you
Yeah,
you
it
buy
was,
you buy the bikes, you don't
yeah.
hire them, or you buy
No, we
them?
bought them. I work with Kaiser. I present for their app called The Ride. So
Okay.
I was really, really passionate about using Kaisers because I love the bike and the way they are and the way that they're really user friendly. And yeah, I mean, I cannot tell you, it was incredibly stressful. And then on top of that, you're having to make a website, design a website, get an app, get a booking app, and all of this, like, it's money on money on money on money.
Mm.
It's been, it hasn't, I can't say it's been easy because it hasn't been easy. And, being pregnant for all of that and then going back to work 6 weeks after she was born, and then running the academy and the studio with her it's been stressful.
Yeah,
And
it's a
when
lot.
you put all
It's
your
a
own
lot.
money to it as well, um there's an element of you haven't got investors, you haven't even got investment advice. But I'm so glad that we have done it ourselves, and it's meant that we can make all of our own decisions. and we're lucky to have incredible teachers who have all come up through my academy,
That must be
and been
nice
trained by
to
me.
be able
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
sort of
yeah.
close that circle.
Exactly.
And with the savings, did you have them already, or had you saved it for this particular project?
No, I when I was in lockdown, I did an online gym, which I saved the money from that. Um,
What you mean you
and
what's sorry, what
I
you
so I ran
created
I
your own?
yeah, I created my own gym. And because I
Okay.
didn't have any rent to pay or wasn't, spending any money at all in lockdown, I saved the money from that. Um, and we borrowed a little bit of money from our parents, not much though. So we did it for as little as we could. But
Mm.
I mean, it's it's been hugely rewarding. But also, when you have investment, you're kind of thinking, oh well, we can spend so much on this and we can spend loads on this. We've had to be really, really careful with, the decisions, and there's so much more that we'd like to do, and hopefully will do. But that's probably going to need investment. So
Okay.
anybody
Well,
out
what are the
there?
okay, well here's your chance. What's the sales pitch? What's next?
Probably to, well, it'd be, we'd love to open another studio.
Okay. Yeah.
Love to open another studio, and it's still, not be. I wouldn't want that many more bikes, because the whole ethos of Cadence is that it's individual care and attention, and we treat everybody differently, and we adapt classes to everybody, and you couldn't do that if you had a lot of bikes. But we'd love to open somewhere else, and make it incredible, because we don't even have changing rooms at the moment. We've got one big toilet upstairs, that people can get changed in, but we don't have changing rooms, we don't have showers, and it doesn't really matter because it's residential. Nobody, and I'm exactly the same. If I go and train, I never shower at the gym. I always come home. But if we were to open
Yeah.
somewhere, somewhere else, somewhere a little bit more central, or we'd love to have that. I just love to make it as amazing as possible, because I think, we often say we've got 5-star, 10-star, incredible classes, but there aren't any changing rooms. It's like going to have amazing food, but you're going down an alleyway and you're sitting on a table outside to wait before you get in. Do you know what I mean? So we always say, kind
Yeah.
of like, the
Yeah.
product is incredible, and I think the way that we're different to a lot of other places is that the other places have all the other things, like smoothie bars or hairdressers or whatever it is, but their classes aren't as good, so they kind of can mask a little bit of that with the amazing space. But we have to make our classes, so good, which they are, in order to kind of make up for that lack of changing rooms, or there isn't a
Yeah.
smoothie bar. So
Well, it
yeah,
sounds like that will all come in time.
that's the
All the
spirit.
yeah, I just think all these things they happen in stages, and that's
Mm,
why I love what you're saying. It just yeah, it's that sort of steps approach, doesn't
yeah,
necessarily all have to happen in one go.
absolutely,
Um,
yeah.
okay. That just sounds amazing. Well, and now you've got your daughter as well. It must be, really challenging to try and fit all that together. But I imagine that because it's self-led and it's all your own thing, at least there's some flexibility in there,
Oh,
especially if you're
absolutely.
working with your partner as well. That
Yeah,
must be dream
yeah.
team by the sounds
Yeah,
of it.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, there's times when she wakes up from a nap and one of us is halfway through an email and the other one is halfway through, something else, and we're like, oh, which one is more important to kind of finish? But that's what happens when you run businesses from home. But she's absolutely brilliant. She's so funny, and it's lovely that we can both be around for her as well. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, I wouldn't change
yeah.
a thing.
Do they have spinning bikes for kids? Get her on one as soon as
Yeah,
possible.
I will. She'll probably rebel and be like, I don't want to go anywhere near
Get me
it.
off that bike. I
Yeah.
do. I do remember my husband being on one of those, the indoor trainers that you can put your bike on.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
there's
yeah,
quite
yeah.
quite a funny video of him holding my son because
Oh,
he was
turbo
doing,
trainers. Yeah,
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 and
yeah, yeah.
he had like a sort of Alps video on the TV or
Oh,
something.
brilliant.
Yeah, it was quite funny. Okay, so when, just to finish off, I suppose, when you look back at the career change that you've had, what would you say have been the best bits and maybe the hardest bits?
The best bits have been working for myself and not having to be, I mean, ironically, when you work for yourself, you end up working harder. You end up working every
Mm,
evening and all
mm,
weekend. And, we'll sometimes we have to say, let's not talk about work for half an hour. But you end up, because you're so passionate about, or things go wrong and you've got to go and fix things, or whatever it is. But at the same time, we can both go on, take Ivy and put her on the swings on a Tuesday afternoon. Do you know what I mean? So it there are times, and we haven't been able to have a holiday for years. But you kind of think, well, actually, I'm not in an office on a rainy Wednesday. I'm at home with my family, and yeah, I'm going to have to go back out later and teach. And then tomorrow morning, an instructor might be sick, and I might have to do the 7 a.m. But the that is outweighed. I cannot. And when it gets really, really tough, occasionally, and you're like absolutely bogged down with everything, and then you're thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to get all this done? And or it gets really stressful. We both go, oh, but at least I'm not sitting in an office. And I think that's the main thing, that
mm.
I've got autonomy. And if we did want to go on holiday for a week, we could. We wouldn't have to get holiday leave or run stuff by someone. Yeah, I mean, it would be incredibly hard to organize, but we could. Do you know what, we could? It's all there. And I think not having to work for anybody else, not having to kind of, and I think there's a lot of anxiety. And I definitely get anxious about things, and I think that there was a lot of anxiety around working in offices, and especially in TV, and going, God, have I done this right? Have I got everything in on time? Is anyone going to tell me off? And being your own boss, there isn't really anyone to tell you off. Yes, things happen, and you go, oh God, that's made me anxious for a different reason. But I think the the relief of just not having to get up and go somewhere and be on someone else's time, and think also, there are times where when you're self-employed or you're running your own business, where you think, this can go any way I want it. I can chill for a bit, or I can try and work as hard as I can and earn loads of money, or you can go, actually, I just want it to be content. So I think you can decide about your own path, and you can decide how you want it to go. And the amount of hard work it takes is, you don't, I mean, when you're doing what you love to do, you yes, there are hard, I think people who say, oh, if you love your job you'll never work a day in your life, is absolute crap. Because I think you're still going to work. Do you know what I mean? Like, we all have days at our jobs, even if you make a career change and you love it, which I am so glad I did. I've never been more grateful. I would never go back to working in TV. And I'm so glad that I made the career change. There are days where you're still going to work. There's
Yeah,
still days when you're doing
yeah.
your accounts, or there's parts of that. So I think the old adage of saying that isn't true. I think we should kind of normalize that we are still going to work. But if you like that job 90% of the time, then you're onto a win.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I think that's such an important message, because I remember in the early days, sometimes I'd struggle because I'd be thinking, "Oh my God, I'm not skipping to work," and
Yeah.
I've changed career, and somehow I'm not, sunshines and rainbows every day, which
Totally.
Instagram tells me it should be.
And it's the guilt going,
Yeah,
oh my goodness, I'm doing my dream job, I should be loving this. And actually, no. Sometimes if there's
still
a
hard
leak and
work.
you've got to get a
Yeah.
plumber out, and then you've got to clean a toilet, do you know what I mean? Like, I think we just need to be realistic.
Yeah. Well, I sometimes see it as, you're going to have problems, whatever you're doing, but it's the difference between problems you care about fixing and problems you probably don't, or that you're fixing for
Exactly.
someone else.
Exactly.
So I think that's when I'm having a tough day. I'm a bit like, well, yes, this is challenging, but it's challenging at least in the realm that of
Yeah,
things that interest me and that are worthy of the
exactly.
challenge
And my
and
partner's
things like
very
that.
good about reminding me about that as well. Because sometimes you can get bogged down in it, can't you? And you need someone to say, like, snap out of it, come on.
Yeah,
Take a
yeah,
bigger look at the
definitely.
picture.
Well, yeah, you can lose perspective, whatever
Yeah.
job you're doing, definitely. Well, I get the sense with what you're doing, I suppose, just to touch on what you said, that there's so much scope for creativity. You're obviously very entrepreneurial and have lots of ideas, and you're in a space where you can make that happen,
Yeah.
which you are, which is, yeah,
Yeah.
it's been very inspiring. um
Oh.
so so if anyone was interested in finding out about the accreditation, that's
Yes.
at the MPowered
Yeah, and they
website.
can do it in person with me, and that's sort of every 6 weeks or so, and that's held in central London in Bank on a
Okay.
Saturday. The next few dates we've got 15th of March. There's one in June. Sort of, it's every 6 weeks, and it's a huge amount of fun. That day is a huge amount of fun because it's just everybody coming together in a room and sort of making friends. And there's people on that course that I still see talking to each other on Instagram now, like 8 years later, from across the world. Or they can do it online, and I just think it's like it will never be wasted getting a certification because it lasts for life, and having that under your belt makes you feel so much more confident and so much more ready to change career. And I think someone like me saying you're really good, you could do this, because I think that's a lot of the time what you need when you're unsure about a career change, is for someone to
Mm.
kind of validate your passion and say this isn't just a passion, this you could do this.
Well, and
And
to see those instructors doing it in your studio
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
other studios. And if they want to visit the studio, where's that?
Come and say hi. We're in North
Yeah.
London, yeah, top of Crouch End.
Okay.
So come and you drop me an email on the website, or book in, or we've got offers if you want to come down and just try a class and all that kind of thing.
Okay.
So
Amazing.
we love welcoming new people, and I especially love welcoming people that have previously hated spin, and I love changing their minds.
Okay. Yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal, definitely. And you said to me earlier you're on Instagram if
Yeah,
people wanted to
m.powered.
you.
Come and
Okay.
say hi. There's a lot of
Brilliant.
dad jokes on there, but
Oh, I love
they're
a dad
intended.
joke. I do love a dad joke. Okay, well, it's been really lovely to hear your story, and funny how things happen with the accident and how it
I know.
opened you up to this world and everything that's come from that.
Yeah,
Life in is a funny thing, that's for sure.
yeah.
But yeah, anything else you'd want to share just
I think
before we
that's
finish
everything.
off
It's
the
been
night?
it's been really really fun talking, and like I remember stuff that I hadn't thought about in years. So yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
well, yeah, it sounds like you've come a long way. So thank you for sharing. And yeah, be good to stay in touch. And I'm sure we'll
Yeah,
speak to you
fantastic.
soon.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thank
All
you.
right then. Take care.
Bye bye bye
Bye.
bye
Bye.
bye.